Hello, Christina. I may say to you, and it's quite a pleasure, I think, to have you here on board to give some experiences, informations, views of the future, which we can do to talk. So first of all, I think this is quite a natural question. How is the situation in Greece? How is it working? Is there any perspective that we might come to an end, to a new situation? If you describe a little bit the situation.
Well, guten Abend, Erker. I'm so happy.
Danke.
I know more words in German than you in Greek. So hello. So thank you very much for inviting me. As you can see, I am self-isolated at my house because Greece is on lockdown for a month now, since early March. So first the schools were shut down, universities also. So we don't go to our office, we don't go to our classes. So everything is online. Situation in Greece is rather good. I mean, compared to other European countries, in Italy, in Spain, in France, in the UK, etc. So in Greece now we are more optimistic because we have only 2,200 cases, and the death toll is rather low. I mean, yesterday, of course, around 100 fatalities. So in a way, we in Greece, we feel that we will escape somehow from this crisis in 2 weeks or so. Of course, the problem is that on April 19th, I mean, next Sunday, the Orthodox Easter is celebrated.
Right.
And so this is maybe the biggest festival for Greeks, and it is very strange that we are not going to meet our families, that we are not going to celebrate with our parents, with our children, or parents with their grandchildren, etc. And the government is very concerned that there is a danger in the next days of contamination. So I think that maybe the government will take even stricter measures, like to forbid circulation of all the cars during the weekend. So we are waiting, but as I said, it is a very strange situation. It is the first time we experience such a situation without a war. Because it is, I mean, the last war that Greece experienced was the Second World War and the Civil War, meaning not after 1950. So for our generation, it is a completely new experience. And but we are stoic, we are disciplined and optimistic.
Thank you very much for this information. Allow me to pick up some points you have already mentioned. First of all, Easter. We are 2 days after the Easter holidays here in Austria, and the government had a lot of concerns because all are meeting, friends are meeting, that they are going outside of the cities, and so on and so on. But I think, as far as we know it until now, it went very well. The discipline of the citizens was really outstanding. I think there were no bigger problems. Even the temptation for car drivers to go on the empty highways quite quick was in limits, I say. So far, I have some hopes that the Austrian citizens are really reasonable. So far, I think we have now a little bit lowering down of the measures, not too much, but some. And so far, there's also the fear that there will be taken too much freedom, and a new wave of the virus might come or so, This is a discussion now. So far, the situation. What was very interesting for me as a Christian, I may say, we had no Holy Mass service, besides the fact that there were a reporting of empty cathedrals and empty churches where only the priest and 3 or 5 persons, some singing and so on, were shown. But obviously, as far as I experienced in the meanwhile, it was very much switched on in the TV stations, so that might be there have been more persons taking part at the ceremonies by TV than they would have done in real Easter time where they go to the church. It's an interesting experience. Hopefully the church is learning out of this, but this is not a subject which we have really to cover. I think one problem I want to mention, and that's a question to you. We have a tough discussion, mainly, I think, I don't know figures, but a lot of personalities are speaking about the concern, what about human rights? That the government is deciding that we can't go out and so on and so on. There is a tough discussion that is against the constitution and so on and so on. I don't think so, because besides the constitution, to protect yourself and to survive is a basic obligation which we have. Is there a similar discussion in Greece?
Well, I think this is a global discussion, especially in Western countries, in Western democracies. You don't have this kind of discussion in Iran or in autarkic countries, I think. So I believe this is healthy, because human rights is not something that we take for granted. We acquired our human rights through battles and fights. So I think that it is there is this discussion, but there is no pressure from Greek population to the government. I would say that although there are stereotypes about Greeks, being non-disciplined or being spontaneous, or that it is difficult for them to follow rules, in this situation, they proved that they are very mature and very responsible citizens. So in my opinion, it is about citizenship. What does it mean to be a citizen? So public good is more important in this respect. And I think that we will discuss about human rights when the crisis is over. If when the crisis, if there are any violations of human rights, yes, then we will protest. But under these circumstances, there is this discussion, but there is no voices in Greek society which are, they think that actually there is no other choice. We have to do this. We have to stay at home. We have to obey these rules to avoid a disaster, which will be, huge if we don't observe the rules.
I share your opinion, and I think I have a similar experience from my view. Sometimes I think these discussions are a little bit over-exaggerated, but it is good that they are happening, because it is a warning, and we have to look at this, because human rights can always be endangered, and so far we have to be very careful of this. And one of my strong arguments is here that a lot of persons and personalities are able to express it. It is a sign of freedom. I think so far we have an open discussion, and I think we have to learn with this, because what touches me very much is, in reality, this whole crisis is a sign that on the one side, we are living in the time of globalization, because it's reaching from Beijing until South America and so on and so on. And on the other side, we don't have the instruments of real cooperation on a global level, not even on the European level. And that might be the next question, looking, and I'm happy that we are able to speak with you as a Greek. What is a feeling in Greece concerning the situation of the refugees and so on and so on? the Greek islands, because these are horrible stories. And for sure, the solidarity of the Europeans is not really working until now. Some are better, a little bit better, some are not so good. I have to confess, I'm not very satisfied with the Austrian behavior. Hopefully, we are learning out of this that we have something to do in this direction. Have the Greeks a feeling that they are second class in Europe? Is it similar like it has been in the economic crisis before?
You are very right in asking this question, because of course now we are experiencing this global crisis of coronavirus, but the refugee crisis has been there in Greece for many, many years. And before that, the economic crisis also was a very hard times for Greece. First of all, let me connect to what we were talking about before, human rights. The question of human rights is alarming, especially in refugee camps. And when you have an epidemic like today, you know that marginal groups, like the poorest strata of society, or refugees, or like Roma communities, for example, in Greece, are more vulnerable because the public health system is already in crisis in Greece because of the economic crisis which lasted 8 years, and when the coronavirus epidemic started, Greece had only 560 intensive care unit beds, very few. So who would have the advantage to make use? Not the Roma, not the minorities, not the refugees. So these are groups where there are alarming situations, and yes, Greece. I think that Greece has this feeling that because Greece is the border of the European Union, it is where refugees and migrants arrive on the islands and also on the border with Turkey. So there is a feeling in Greece that she would need more support from the European Union. But it is not only a Greek feeling, I think, that EU has not shown solidarity in all the cases. And also because there are conflicting national interests inside the Union, and there are a kind of different groups of countries, as you said, first class, second class, third class, I don't know. But in a way, there is, I think, this sentiment, and not only in Greece. I think that Italy has it also now, for example.
Thank you very much for your comment. May I ask, you mentioned the situation of the islands and of the border to Turkey and so on and so on. Do you have any perspective how the Turks will behave? Might they be open again the borders and press the people, the refugees, to go in the direction to Central Europe? Or is to expect that the Turkish government or even the Mr. President Erdogan is more reasonable than he is sometimes?
Well, maybe you know better than me to answer this question, because it is about foreign policy and international relations. So I have no information about that. What I know is that just before the coronavirus crisis, Turkey was sending thousands of people on the Greek border to cross, to go to the European Union, and it was trying to put pressure on EU but it is Turkey's position, I think, is more complex, more complicated because of the Middle East, because of the war in Syria, and because of the migration management. So it is not just a bilateral issue between Greece and Turkey. It is a major geopolitical issue where also Russia and the US and all the other countries are involved. So I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a minister of the foreign affairs. I don't know to answer this question. What is your opinion?
I want to say, I think what's coming out clearly is that we have no real common European position on these questions. And this is a pity. I don't want to discuss the treaties of the European Union or constitution or whatever the discussion is. I think it is more basic. We need a common behavior, I think, to solve this problem, and a common feeling. And I think we have sometimes solidarity, sometimes we are lacking totally solidarity, which for sure is a pity. And I think we Europeans will only survive if we are more in solidarity. So far, it's not only a problem of the European Commission. I think it is a problem also of the governments of the member states, without any doubt. So far, I think this is connecting my next question to you. The Prime Minister of Greece, Mitsotakis, is always mentioning the question of financing the whole problem. It is a financing of things where we have already spent money, may I say. We are paying for the debts. But it is also a question where we are spending the money in the future. And I think here we need quite more solidarity. I think the umbrella which was brought up out of the former Euro crisis is something, but I think it is not enough. We need more common instruments and for the capacity to make decisions. The real problem is that we have in the moment not really a capacity of decisions. A crisis can be a reason to develop more capacity in this direction. If we are not doing, we might fail to handle it in general. It is more a general problem than only for the European Union. And so far, that's a real question. Do you think that we are really learning out of this? In the moment, everybody is writing articles, we are learning. But I'm not quite sure. If it is a little bit better and I can travel where I want, that I can go to the Adriatic Sea or whatever, then it will be again normal. But the question is, what is really normal?
Well, as a historian, I don't believe we learn from our mistakes, and I don't think we learn from the past. And of course, I don't believe also that history is repeating itself. But in a way, there are analogies, because if we go back to the after the end of the Second World War, when the whole idea of European integration started, we will see that Europe realized that she needed this union because of the traumatic experiences of the past. But we forget too fast. And in some years, new crises arrive. And now I believe that we are in a similar situation where there is a danger of disintegration of the EU if there is not this kind of solidarity. And you know better than me, and maybe you could give better explanation why this is happening, why nation states, member states, think that national interest is not the same as the European interest, that there is a kind of conflict, or there is a kind of hierarchy, that national interests go first, or they are not compatible with the common European interest. Why do you think that national foreign policies do not align? And is it because European institutions are not strong enough? We are not a federal, it's not a federal state that, like the US, for example. So maybe it is a question that it is a reason why European institutions are not respected, are not recognized as stronger than the national ones? I really would like to listen to your opinion on that.
I have to confess, I have had the opinion that we are able to learn out of history. But nowadays, I have to say, I'm following your opinion that we are not really learning. A little bit we have learned. If I'm looking to the history of my home country, Austria, I think the Austrians have something learned out of it, because between the two world wars, they lost democracy. Then the Nazis came up, and so on and so on. And afterwards, I think after the end of the Second World War, in my time, in my lifetime, really, I think it was becoming better. But now I'm sharing your opinion. We have a certain interpretation of the nation state, which is a kind of egoism. I think we are always speaking about the human rights, and I have mentioned it in the beginning. So far, that is a common basis. And if I ask what is really in Europe happening, it is the acceptance of the human rights. But is it really? I think we are not even coming together in the basis of our decisions. And I think that makes me a little bit skeptical that we are able to do so. Sometimes in history, but you are the expert on the subject, huge crises have the capacity to move things forward and to give a push to new solutions. I think the international institutions like the United Nations and were a product of the Second World War. But if you are looking also to the United Nations and all the organizations, I think they are doing nothing. They are not able to make decisions. And horrible enough, in these days, Donald Trump blamed the World Health Organization. As far as I was following what the World Health Organization has done, they were really warning. Not Mr. Trump were warning and the others. The World Health Organization said the right things. But here it's turned in the other direction. And I'm a little bit critical also of the medias, because the medias are always mentioning only the one negative direction, and they are not speaking enough about positive directions. I think maybe it's a question to you as a scientist and a historian, and it's a question to me as a former politician. Offensively, until now, we did not do enough, I think, to improve the situation. So far, Christina, what have we to do in the next days after the ending, if it is ending?
I'm not sure I heard your question. What we are going to do, you say? I'm not sure. Or Greece. I hear you. Sorry, there was a break in the connection.
I think
Did you ask about
it
Greece
was a question,
or in general?
to you as a Greek, as a scientist, and as a European. I think what we have to do, I think, to improve this situation, because the conditions under which we are living now are not really the best. What might be the next steps? Is it a question of education? Is it right that sometimes it is said that the democracy system is not really working, and so on and so on? These are basic questions, because I appreciate very much your contribution concerning reconciliation by the history books and so on and so on. I think we have to raise the question to ourselves, did we do enough that the things are changing, or is it only a first step and even we failed to continue so far? I have to confess, we had not reached what we really wanted to do in the right direction.
Well, I am both a pessimist and an optimist. This is why I'm doing this. Unfortunately, politicians, as a rule, don't listen to scientists, don't listen to historians. Maybe you are one of the exceptions, but you know better than me that always politics came first, and media also don't invite us. They invite people who make fun or who sell in a way. We are too serious to be invited to TV shows. Of course, we try uh, to to tell our as you said, we are activists. I mean, many of us in Europe, in the world, we write books, we write in the newspapers, we also we are active on social media, etc. However, it is very difficult to access public opinion because populist politicians and populist media have the power. We have to admit it. And I don't think that this is going to change. Having said that, I don't think that we will stay silent. We will speak up together all the time and to try to make others listen. There are people who will listen, and education, as you said, is very important. So I can have an impact on the new generation, on my students. I can inspire them, and teachers. I can inspire teachers to change the points of view. So the future of our society is with the new generation, is with young people. So I think this should be our target. And how we are going to do this, I mean, everyone can do what he and she can in his or her own field. This is my opinion. But we cannot stay silent and passive. This is for sure.
You are totally right. I think it is extremely important what is happening after the end of the crisis concerning analysis. For the moment, it's looking like that, especially some top politicians are explaining that they were always right, they did the right things, and they predicted everything, even if they predicted nothing, and so on and so on. So far, I think we have to change the kind of discussion and may say, what did we right, what did we wrong, what can we learn out of it, are the consequences, also of the shape, how politics is done, and so on and so on. Because for sure, the majority of politicians, and as a former politician, I have to confess, that's one of the main mistakes which my profession is doing. We're always trying to win the next elections. And I think that's not enough. I think we have to solve the problems and to improve the situation. My concern is somebody has to pay for the crisis we are going through. And I think we have to pay all together. I think you cannot move it. The discussion in Austria is already starting. The so-called rich have to pay it, no, the others have to pay it, and so on and so on. I think that's not really a solution. I think we have to do a discussion about what means solidarity, or the old Christian rule. I think we have to love each other, and we are responsible for each other in this relation. Hopefully, I think these messages have to be given stronger. I think also by the science. I think scientists have a certain responsibility in this direction. The politicians, without any doubt, that's the reason why they are elected or not elected. But also, I think there are some basic professions in the society which who have some responsibility, and that's a responsibility of scientists, I think, to look for the truth. I think we have to look to the truth, the message of the truth, which was given by the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are very right in saying that the next day will be critical for our future because we will be different. I have to confess that I am afraid how we are going to behave to each other because now we are, with all this social distancing and all these restrictions and all the psychological burden that we have for a long time. It's not short. I mean, 2 months is long. And I am afraid how ourselves, our children, young children, we go out back to school. Is fear going to be more important than before? because it can really influence our way of thinking and acting. So first, this on the psychological level, I think there will be a problem, not only in Greece or in Austria, everywhere. Then there will be countries which will be more affected. For example, Greek economy, according to IMF, is expected to record a recession of 10% in this year, which is huge. Compare it to the crisis, during the 8-year crisis, Greek economy contracted by 26%. So in 8 years, and now in 1 year, 10%. So there will be problems. There are shops which are closing down. They not survive the crisis. The number of unemployed is going to grow. This is another problem, which is a European problem. The number of jobless people, especially young people who are starting now their career. What are they going to do? So, as each society has to show solidarity to these people. We mentioned the refugees and the asylum seekers before. So they stay in Greece or in Austria. How are they going to find a job? How are they going to survive? They have families. Who is going to support them? And we don't know what will happen because they are in campuses and overcrowded, and it can be like a huge there is a kind of bomb, so maybe it will explode by the end of this coronavirus crisis. So because you said that politicians want to predict and they say we will do this or that in the future, well, again, as a historian, I tell you that history is unpredictable. And it is, although we think that there are, all these powerful centers in the world who plan what will happen, etc., all of a sudden something happens, and there is a reverse of what we expect. So we cannot predict even next week what will happen.
I think these are really right ideas or right descriptions which you are mentioning. I think I'm deeply impressed if I'm listening to the TV and other reports and reading newspapers or whatever is existing. Everybody is speaking about the current situation, that we are missing the contact to each other, and we have not the possibility to talk with each other. But if I'm going to the streets of Vienna and sometimes also elsewhere, what can I see? If somebody is coming in a tram or in a place, he's putting out the handy and phoning and not speaking with the neighbor. I think maybe we are learning that the neighbor is really closer than not only by electronics, which is a possibility for sure. I don't want to refuse it. But I think it would be necessary that we are able to talk more about. Maybe we have to develop a strategy. How can we have a real process of discussion? What did we experience and what have we to do in the future? And the second remark, which I want to underline, are the professions, which is coming out. I don't know if it is similar in Greece, which is coming out in Austria. We are an overaged society. So far, the critical part of the society being endangered by the virus are the elderly people. And we are missing here the right persons, I think, to treat them, to help them, and so on and so on. We got it from Slovakia, from Hungary, from Czech Republic, from Poland, and so on and so on. But now, by closing the borders, they cannot come. And so far, we have a huge problem in this direction. Maybe we are learning out of this, that to look to each other under different conditions, by different ages, different situations, and so on, needs another behavior, which we are doing. Maybe we have to learn what solidarity really means. I think it is sometimes more explained theoretically than in practice. And hopefully this learning process is really happening.
Well, I want to share your hope You are very right in saying that before the crisis, if you went to a restaurant, people would sit together and they would have their phones and just they were on Facebook, although they were with others and they were not talking to each other. Maybe this crisis will make us realize that human contact is very important, that physical contact is important. Now we are communicating via Skype, but it is much better to be sitting at the table together and drinking and having fun and having this human contact, which is a real need. And maybe this is a lesson to be learned because of the crisis. We will realize that we need our friends, that we need to talk face to face to them, that we need to hear them, and yeah, maybe this would be a good lesson to learn because of this crisis.
I share this hope with you, and it might be a good end to a good moment to end our discussion. Maybe I have to promise if we are meet the next time in a restaurant, no handies, no computer, and we shall talk to each other, not needing a Skype, but realizing what the relations between human beings should be. So far, Christina, I have to say many thanks. It was quite a pleasure to meet you in this way under the current situation, and I wish you all the best, and hopefully we will see us again soon. May I say bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure talking to you. Auf Wiedersehen.
Ευχαριστώ.
Tschüss.